Hey everyone, I'm Joe and today I'm doing a review of EmbassyTown by China Mieville. This was originally published in 2011 and this edition was published by Pan in 2012. China Mieville is an author whose genre of choice is very hard to describe because he writes both in science fiction, fantasy and, in his own words, new weird. And frankly, weird is a very good description for his writing and his books because they really are weird in every single sense of the word. In all of his books, Mieville likes to really play on language and use words in ways that frankly most people don't, and really investigate language. In this book, it's no different, other than the fact that in this, he really is focusing completely on language and linguistics. I mean, that is the whole point of this book. He's focusing on communication and how we talk, and indeed the lack of communication between people and the problems it can cause, which obviously are real in our own world. So, first of all, EmbassyTown is a human colony on an alien world called Avatar. The alien population on this world is called the Arakai, same word but with an I on the end. The local name and nickname for this alien race are the hosts. And the one thing that everybody, humans, know them for is the fact they cannot lie. I'll explain why this is important shortly. The Arakai have two mouths, and their two mouths speak as one when they are communicating. And they are saying two different words or sounds, but these two words or sounds are not separate conversations. It means one word. It's extremely complex, and as a result, humans cannot directly talk to them one-on-one because obviously we cannot create two sounds at exactly the same moment in harmony. Therefore, it takes very special ambassadors who are identical twins, and identical twins are traditionally thought of as having a very special link, to talk to them. Both of them say different words and different sounds, and then the Arakai or the host can understand them and talk back. And it's sounding really weird, but actually it does make a peculiar kind of sense actually. There is a new ambassador that's just started at the start of the book called Ez Ra. One of the twins is called Ez and the other Ra. All the ambassadors have got these double names, which is actually a really clever idea and I really like. But he's a little bit different from all the ambassadors that's come before him, and he basically affects the hosts or the Arakai in a really peculiar way. At the same time as Ezra is just becoming the new ambassador, a woman called Avis, who grew up on EmbassyTown but then moved away to obviously live and work away from the planet on multiple other locations, she returns. Avis is what is called an immerser. An immerser is somebody who can navigate on the Immer. The Immer is weird because it is a river of sorts, but not a physical river. It is a sort of spatial river through time and space, and it sort of jumps around from place to place. It's never fully explained, and frankly I'm not 100% sure how it works, which is a bit of a shame because it really does sound an interesting idea. But it's somewhat important for the start of the book, although less important towards the end, because by that point it's more about the host. And she is able to navigate through a natural sort of instinctive ability on the Immer, and that makes her greatly in demand outside of EmbassyTown, and obviously that is why she works here. But she returns to EmbassyTown with her new husband in tow, and because she's lived away for so long, she has a very different way of thinking, frankly, than most of the locals who generally live there for pretty much their entire lives. And between her and Ezra and the host, they all have a peculiar and interesting effect on one another, and events spiral, let's say, in an interesting direction. And I'm not going to say more because obviously I don't want to say spoilers, but the plot is quite curious, although it's more about ideas than plot, which I'll now explain. The story, though, is more about linguistics and language and the evolution of language and communication rather than plot or character. I mean, obviously plot and character are important to the book, of course, because the book wouldn't work without them. And obviously the exploration of communication and language wouldn't work without those two things. But they're almost secondary to the exploration. And this is a really weird concept. And it does make the book, especially at the beginning of the book, quite difficult to get into. But once you do get into it, and obviously depending on if you are enjoying what you're reading, which not everybody does, I'm aware of that, then it does make it a very worthwhile book, whilst also being quite challenging and really thought-provoking in many interesting ways. Mieville is exploring the development of language and the evolution of it. How can it go from basic grunts and groans, which obviously as humans we once did communicate in grunts and groans, well, some people still do, and how we now communicate. And obviously this then applies to the Arakai, who have a very unique way of talking, of course. This double voice method that the Arakai use is really curious, and it doesn't sound like it'll work at first, but actually it really does work, and it does work in conjunction to the ambassadors and to Avis, who she wants to communicate with them, but obviously she's just one person, so by herself she can't. And this obviously leads to multiple different events and a really weird look at language and just how it can develop and why it should develop. Because is language evolved based on our need, or is it evolved based on external sources? You know, does it evolve purely because of others trying to communicate with us, and therefore we've evolved a communication system, or is it evolved because us ourselves wanted to say something greater than what we can, and we want to evolve as a species and as a physical being? And that is what Mieville is trying to explore in a very peculiar but interesting way. The Arakai speak completely literally. They cannot use and they don't understand simile or metaphor. Because they don't understand either of those two things, that is why they cannot lie. At least, I mean, they would like to be able to. They understand the vague concept of what a lie is, but because they don't use or can't understand metaphors or similes, however, they can't actually lie. Despite the fact they do try, but they just fail because it goes against their very nature to say something that isn't reality. They are extremely descriptive species. They describe things exactly how they are. So saying that somebody is tall when they're actually very small just goes against them, and they really struggle to it. And indeed that is a significant plot point with the book, is about them trying to learn to lie and say things other than what they are, you know, sort of speak against reality. And that leads to some very interesting events, and Mieville explores this lack of metaphor and simile. Frankly, I've never read a book where metaphor and simile is quite so crucial to the plot and characters speaking for whatever. You know, it's just part of the book normally. In this, it's the point of the book is a lack of simile and metaphor, which is peculiar, but again, really interesting. Due to the Arakai's way of thinking, however, they can't develop further properly, at least not on their own. Obviously that's why they are interacting with humans, because they want to sort of develop in a way that by themselves it's not instinctive to go in that direction. But with humans they can, at least they hope they can, because humans, of course, we have a big pile of languages, and within each language, of course, we have a ton of different meaning depending on context and such. So for the Arakai, it's really a big deal for them, and they really want to learn how we communicate so their communication can evolve and change to something greater. Obviously a lot of the Arakai don't, but some of them do, and yeah, that's significant to the plot as well, which I'm not going to go into, of course, because of plot spoilers again. So overall, this is an interesting exploration of language and linguistics by Mieville. It's a remarkable achievement, I think. I mean, I really enjoy this book, as I've said. It explores the language and linguistics in a really peculiar way, which is very unique to China Mieville. If you've never read China Mieville before, I would not suggest starting with this book. This book would be an unpleasant one to start with, frankly. And I'm very glad that I started with something, well, relatively simple for Mieville, although simple for Mieville is still not easy, frankly, because it's a very unusual writing style, which some people like, obviously I do, some people really struggle with, which I can understand because he uses unusual words and phrases, and he modifies words to meet his requirements, and it does lead to some peculiar situations where you're not entirely sure what he's trying to say until a fair bit later in the book, and then you realise that something he said earlier actually makes sense. Now, it's interesting, unusual, and if you like it, really worthwhile, frankly. I'd recommend this for anyone who wants something very thoughtful and thought-provoking to read, and who isn't afraid of some really peculiar and unique writing style. Because, well, that is the definition of Mieville, pretty much. Anyway, with that said, that is it for this review. If you've read this book or would like to read it, then please leave a comment and we can have a discussion as always. All my social media links can be found in the description box below, as they always are. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.